Got it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yomi Masechah Sukkah. So we left off 4 lines from the top. We were discussing the previous cases. Machlokes, when you have a courtyard and there's balconies and there's schach in between. So why do the balconies have to be? Do you say Pitikra, special halacha l'Moshe Sinai, right? That if you have something that comes out, that perhaps there can be the edge of it is like it's sealed down and it creates a halachic wall. So 4 lines from the top, Tanat. V'chein chatzer hamukefes achsadra, and so too a chatzer, right? That is covered with schach, right? In a courtyard. So imagine you have like an L-shaped apartment complex with balconies facing in the middle, right? Then you put some schach that covering it. So those areas. So we say over there, it's no good. Why is it no good? Because over there, the issue is the balconies are longer than Dalet Amos. If it's longer than Dalet Amos, then you can't say it's Dofen Akuma, right? You can't say like the wall like bends over here because it's too much of a bend. It bends over 5 Amos. Less than 4 Amos, no problem. But now there's no walls there because it comes out too far. It's like just hanging schach. It doesn't have walls. So why don't you say that the edges of the balconies go ahead and creates halachic walls? Over here, the bamboo or skach or whatever it is that's on top is not above the balconies, like resting on top of the balconies. In other words, where you see the side, the edge of the balcony going down. Rather, it's flush. Since it's flush, there is no sort of face of the side of the balcony. Since there is no face of the side of the balcony, there's nothing to say that comes down because it's all in there flush. So since the schach is in there flush, that's why you don't say in that case, pitik or yodev seisem. And Besura Masni Laha Shmaitza B'Hai Lishna. In Surah, they had the same limud, but they actually learned a little the way we just explained. And Pumadisa Masni, however, in Pumadisa, a little slightly different version. Sichach al Gabi Achsadra. If they put schach upon these balconies, right, in the courtyard, on the edges of the balconies, where there is no psimin, there is no poles or posts that come down by the edges of the balconies, right, to give it, let's say, so make sure the balconies are sturdy, and these poles are within 3 tvachim of one another, right? If it's there is no poles coming down, everyone says possible because there's no walls there. You don't say pitigri or same, and there's no post coming down. Yesh if there are walls coming down, Abai Amar Kshera. Abai Amar says it's kasher, and Rav Amar Psula. Rav says Psula because there's not walls there. And Abai Amar Kshera, lovely. Abai says it's kasher. Why? Because we say that since these poles are less than 3 tvachim from one another, it's considered like the airspace is sealed off from the halacha l'Moshe Sinai of lavud. And Rav Amar Psula, and Rav says Psula lo mean lavud. We don't say lavud. The hilchasa kalishna kama. The halacha is like the first version, like the lishna kama. So we're like 12 lines on the top. Ravashi, like third of the way down. So one time Ravashi saw Rav Kahana. He was sleeping in one of these sort of courtyards that surrounded with the balconies. The schach was basically on the balconies, and there were no psimin. There were none of these posts that were attaching by the edges of the balconies to create a wall. So he said to him, you don't hold that which Rava said. If it has poles, then we can say love it. If there's no poles, then it's no good. So he showed him right? He showed him that the angle where you're looking at, right? If you're looking at the inside, rather, actually, there's a good picture here, right? It's tough to describe. If you look at the picture 12, right? 12 over there. So it also there's a picture on the side. It's not as easy, but basically you have this courtyard, right? Or the sukkah, right? Even the picture in the Gemara, right? So the L bracket on top is the walls of the sukkah. So where's the third wall? So the third wall is flush. You can't see from the inside, but it's actually the outside. So there is another wall. He didn't see that wall. There is another post. It's just on the back of that sukkah. All right. So the real question is, right? Or you can see it from the outside, but on the inside. Nira mibachutz v'sham b'fnim nidon mishum lachi v'lachi hainap tzivin. So there's a halacha that we know by a mavui. You have a courtyard, right? You have a courtyard, an L-shaped courtyard open from one end, or not an L-shape, a ches, right? A ches courtyard, right? So you need a post standing on one of the edges so people recognize there's a difference between the mavui and the Rishus HaRabim, all right? So the halacha that if you have the mavui, that if it's completely flush, right, it's just on the side, doesn't work. If it actually is on the outer side, so imagine if you have, if this was, I guess, the edge of the wall, right? Or whatever. Right. If this was the edge of the wall, right, and here's the courtyard like this. So if it's sticking out over here, so you can see from the inside. There's also halacha that if it's sticking out on the outside, it also works as a lechi. Even though when you're standing in the courtyard, you don't see it. But since it's recognized on the outside, it counts. So too in our case. Even though while in the sukkah, they weren't using one of the posts coming down as a wall, since it's on the outside. So it's L-shaped and it's outside. Right. Right. So the real question is, right? Everyone asks, okay, so where are your three walls? You need three walls for a sukkah. How does that work to three walls? You have one wall here, and basically what we're showing is the third wall is over here. So how is this a sukkah if your three walls are 1, 2, 3? Right? It doesn't make sense. So some want to say that in this case we're talking about the third halal. There's what's it called? There's like a imaginary. There's like a doorway, right, or a post going at source of Pesach on this side to actually do it. Because if there was nothing here, then where's your third wall, right? You don't have three walls. But since some say maybe it's source of Pesach, and since this already goes to Tevach this way, it could also be going this way through the source of Pesach. But that's how some understand this Gemara, because otherwise it's a bit schwer as to where is this third door. But anyways, the point is, even if you see the wall from the outside, even though you're sitting in the sukkah, you only see two walls. But since there's a wall on the outside, that works. As we see, that does work in the case of a mavui, the lechi in the case of mavui. Fine, 2 dots in the middle. So Tana. So we say psala yitzim in a sukkah. If you have skach puzzle, all right. Well, we'll soon see this. Actually, we're going to have a number of interpretations of psala yitzim in a sukkah. Nidon kasukah. It is considered to be a sukkah. By psala yitzim in a sukkah. What is psala yitzim in a sukkah? Samar ula. So kanim hayitzim achorei sukkah. So you have, let's say you have your bamboo, right? Your bamboo, and it's sticking over the sukkah. Sticking over the sukkah. It's longer than your sukkah. If you go on the outside, that you're under a skach. The walls are on the inside. So that's, if one sits under there, according to this, Havmin is psal yesmin sukkah. Nidoka sukkah. You can sit under there. I'm under the skach. Even though it's outside the sukkah. It's outside the sukkah. No, there's no walls there. There's no walls there right now.
One has two.
Let's see.
The other one you're right, but one has
I need three walls. How do you just have skaf? You only have one wall, there's other walls. But there you go. Okay, there's walls there. I believe in a hechsher sukkah. If it says walls, it has to be this at least 7 by 7. So but the Ika was also okay, the 7 by 7 also on this side. You need more shade than sunlight. So but the Ika, there is more shade than sunlight. If that's the case, what's the chiddush here, right? You got more shade, you got 7 by 7, you got 3 walls. What's the shit? So Mo just said, since you made the sukkah for the purpose of the inside, you never intended to sit on the outside. Maybe that wouldn't be good. Maybe that's no good. Kamashlan, it's good. And Rabbi Rav Yosef have a different interpretation of what is psal yitzim in a sukkah. So Rabbi Rav Yosef, Amar Tavayo, hacha b'kanim hayotzim lifnim in a sukkah. You have skach coming out, in the case of what Yigal said, right? And one of the doors extend out. One of the walls extend out. One of the walls extend out, and you have the skach go, even though you have one more. So now the tema, let's say the extra sukkah. Maybe you say, there's no extra sukkah here. Kamash Malon, that would be okay, even if you have one wall extended. And Rabbi Rav Chanan Rav Yechon lo nitzucha el sukkah sheruba tzalasim meruba mechamasa. You're talking about a case of you have a sukkah that a majority of it there's more shade. Right, and you have where the women sit, right? They say, oh, you guys sit up there. There's not the schach is a bit schwach over there, right? The schach there's more sun than shade over there. So Maldev Wov just said maybe you could say sitting under that area is no good. Most of the other areas are majority shade. That area over there is very weak, right? So Kamash Balon, that's Psal, Yaitse Sukkah is Kasha Sukkah. Nidon Sukkah. Well, my Yaitse, what's the Lashon of Yaitse in a Sukkah? My Yaitse, because other Pshatim are good. Yaitse means because they extended outside the actual Sukkah. Over here, what's the Yaitse? My Yaitse. Yaitse Mehakshir Sukkah means it's Psal HaYaitse Mehakshir Sukkah. It's Psal, right? It's Schach that is not really, that wouldn't be a kosher Sukkah. Nevertheless, since it's part of the entire sukkah, right? It's 55% shade. Therefore, even though there are sections where you might have more sun than shade, that's okay. Rabbi Yeshamar, right? We're talking about a sukkah. Right? We're talking about you have schach pasel. You have some, let's say, metal, right, or something that's up there. It's a kli or something that's covering part of your sukkah in a 7x7. And even though you have small, less than 3, so you have 2 tfachim that are covered by a shirt and the rest is schach, it's okay. Well, my yaitse, what does it mean? My yaitse, yaitse mitara sukkah. That is yaitse sukkah. It's even though it's not part of the halacha of sukkah, it would be okay. So I understand why do you have to teach that? We know that avir, right? Open space, which we know is more machmer than schach pasel. Schach pasel we know is 4 tfachim. Avir is anything over 3 tfachim. It's 3 tfachim, it ruins a sukkah. So the schach pasel is no worse than avir, and avir less than 3 in a sukkah ketana works. So I'm relate. Rabbi Abba zemit star v'shem tachtam, zemit star v'shem tachtam. No, here's the difference. The chiddush is that when it comes to schach pasel in a small sukkah of 7x7, even though it's, let's say, 2.5 tfachim, the sukkah is kosher and you're allowed to sit under it. However, when it comes to avir, the avir is the star. If we say, okay, even though the avir is 2.5 tfachim, the sukkah is still a kosher sukkah, but don't sit under that open space there. Sit in the other 4.5 tfachim. Don't sit in that space there. So Mara asks, the itzruvi mistarif for who asks a kosher. Right? Is there something that we find that we say, okay, it is mistarif to the proper shear, to the proper measurement, but right, you can't fulfill your obligation under there, like we're saying here. Oh, the avir is good, the entire sukkah is good, but you can't sit under the avir. So do we find such a concept? So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elishav, ein. He says, yes, actually we do. Right? What's the case? There, turn the page. Tid hanarok yeichiach shemitstarav le'arbaim sa v'atayv ba lo yasel lo yitfilah. The case of very muddy, thick water, that it could be mitzvah. The minimum shear for a mikvah has to be 40 saw, right, of water. Let's say some of the water is basically mud water. It works. It's a kosher mikvah, right? However, if you're toivel in the area where the muddy part is, it doesn't work. So even though it is mitzaref, it does combine and join to your total to get yourself 40 saw, right? It was the measurement of value. Nevertheless, if you're toivel, you go ahead and you dip or whatever needs to be toivel in that area, or you go in that area, it doesn't count. So we see there is something that is mitzaref, but you can't be yaitziba. Fine. Now in Mishnah, 2 lines from the top on Yud Testament base. One who goes ahead and makes his sukkah like a cone, like a teepee, sort of. Or he takes schach, he takes like bamboo, whatever it is, and he leans it up against the wall. So he has the wall and just leans it up against it. And let's say he has 2 walls on the side, he leans it up against it. So Rebbe Eliezer says it's no good. There is no God. There is no roof. Why? Because it's slanted. Slanting is a roof. You need something which is horizontal. So since there's no horizontal, it's not considered to be a roof.
Before we said it about the cover, if you remember,
yeah,
that slanted is okay for it doesn't pass through the schach. So you see what I'm saying?
So very good. Mar's gonna ask. Very good. Yeah, and Chachamim machshir. The Chachamim say it's kosher. Chachamim say no. This is considered walls. So Tana. So Zakti Gemara Tana Ma'ader Rebbe Eliezer Sheim Hekbi Amina Karga Tefach. If you go ahead and you raise up, right, from the ground a tefach, right, that we say that since now there's something which is going up, and so therefore this is now like a roof, right? So therefore, it's now, since you elevate it off the ground a tefach, or this is on the ground, and then you have a tefach straight, there already is a shem gag. Since there is something which is shem gag, we can say this connects, the slanted schach connects to the roof now, and now you have a schach roof, right? With just one tefach, which is no good. So mother of business, that is kosher because now there is considered to be a gag. So my time the Rabbanan. What's the reason according to Rabbanan? So the Chayim hold the reason why it's kosher is because a slanted roof is a roof. So slanting is okay. So Baye Ashkel Rav Yosef the Kilas Chasanan B'Sukkah. So this is a reference to the case you brought. So Baye once found Rav Yosef. He was in his sukkah, right, in a tent with and a bed with a cover, right? It was like a slanted cover over it. Kilas Chasanan, right? There's a picture of those in the art scroll, right? Number 11, right? Oh, you have it there, right? It's number 11. He's in a little like tent in his sukkah, right? So he's in tent in his sukkah. So the sukkah is a regular sukkah, right? Regular, beautiful sukkah. And he's like, it's slanted on top of him. So he found him there. He's going to be summer lake. Come on. So who do you hold like? Rebbe Eliezer. You hold like Rebbe Eliezer, right? Now remember, he has to hold that these slanted roofs are considered to be nothing, right? Because if he holds a slanted roof as a roof, now he's not sleeping in a sukkah. He's sleeping in a tent, right? Or whatever, a bed, right? So he obviously has told that slant is no good. So who do you hold like? Look at our mission. Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was an apostles of slanted schach roof, right? So I'm like, come on, Rabbi Eliezer. So Shatu Rabban Rabbi Eliezer. What? You left the shita of the Rabbi Eliezer and you act like left the shita of Rabban. You act like Rabbi Eliezer. So I'm like, Brisa Ivchatani. No, there's a price that says the opposite opinion. Rabbi Eliezer. Machshir. Rabbi Eliezer says a slanted schach roof is kosher. The Chayim say pasta because a slanted roof is not a roof. So Shafka Masnis and Vatag of Brisa. Okay, in fact, you found a Brisa, but you're leaving a Mishnah and you're going like a Brisa, right? We go like Mishnayis when it comes to if they're against a Brisa. Similarly, Masnis and Yechidai. Actually, our Mishnah is only the Das Yachid. Why? The time we have another Brisa identical to our Mishnah. Ha'oisa Sukkasa Kimin Strip. Oh, she's having a Kaisel. Rabbi Nassan Omer Rabbi Eliezer Paisan Gdeishin Lagag Chaim Machshir. It's Rabbi Nassan's opinion that Rabbi Eliezer was the one who says pasal and the Chum say kosher. But everybody else held the opposite. Everybody else held that Rabbi Eliezer was who was Machshir and the Chum say it's pasal because the Chum hold. The Chum says pasal because the Chum hold that a slanted roof is not a roof, and Rabbi Eliezer was the one who held that a slanted roof is a roof.
Wait, but Rabbi Eliezer will hold if you don't have the foot, right? That is still
right. So that would not be the sheet of the Chum because we flip flop them, right? So the Chum say slanted roof is not a roof, therefore one could sleep in a sukkah in a tent, right? If he's in a sukkah, if he's in a tent. Right, that would be okay because that's not a roof, and the chumrah is that if you're on with the sukkah with just a complete slant, right, then that wouldn't work. Fine. Now Mishnah says, if one has a large reed mat, I guess very similar to our mats that were done, right, that we have now. If it's a large one, if it was made for lying down upon, maybe you set up as a hammock or something like that, or a bed, then it's makabel tuma. It's subject to tuma, and therefore something which is makabel tuma is not fit to be schach. You can use a schach. The sichuch. If you make this large reed mat, the sichuch, right, for the purpose of schach, right, you do it over at the Rosenblum's, right, the Chicago bookstore, then you go ahead and make schach, right? You're allowed to use it. The ain't makabel tuma because it's not makabel tuma. Whether it's small or large, also the shchiva, if it was made for the purpose of sleeping on, the kabbalah tuma, then it's makabel tuma. You can't use it as schach. And the sichuch, if it was made for the purpose of using it as schach, then then you can make it as then it's made for schach. Then you can use it because it's not makabel tuma. So the words of the Mishnah seem to be an apparent contradiction. First, you said if you made it specifically for the purpose of sleeping, it's makabel tuma. Famous achimba, then you can't use it as schach. right? The reason is because you b'dafka did it for sleeping. Hastam, if you just made a reed mea with no intentions, the sichuch, right? Then the stama is for schach, right? So only if I made it for sleeping, then it's mekabel tuma. It's no good. Sounds like if I just made one, it'll be okay as long as I didn't make it for the specifically. Right? Yeah, right. For sure. So if it's only if the dafka had intentions for using it to sleep, then it's no good. Everything else is okay. The other time, then says in the seifa, the sichuch, if I made it for the purpose of schach, then it's achimba, then you can use it as schach and samekabel tuma. The sichuch. Only reason is because I specifically made it for schach. But any other if I just made a mat, then some would be for sleeping and it wouldn't be good. So it's a contradiction. Which one is it? Right? One seems to say that it's always the shchiva, anything else is okay. The other one says no, it's only if you did it for schach, but everything else is no good. Says kasha, kan bigdoila, kan bigtana, right? A large one, a small one. If it's a large one, right? So a large one, then we'll say that would say Rashi's say here. I will go explain. Right. So if it was a large one, then it was made for the purposes of schach, right? And therefore, then the stomach is the schach, right? And if it's a small one, then the stomach is the shchiva for sleeping. And Rabbi Eliezer, but what do you mean? Right, then look at the next part of the Mishnah. Mishnah says Rabbi Eliezer who seems to be arguing or adding something. Says Rabbi Eliezer, right, that if whether it's big or small, if you made it for shchiva, then it's makabel tuma. Then misachimba. So the shchiva. The only reason is the large or small. He made it specifically for shchiva. Hastama. But if you made it any other reason, it doesn't matter the size, large or small. The sichuch, it would be okay. So ema seifa. So says also the sichuch must if you made it for schach, then misachimba. The ema kabel is tuma, right? And then it says he made it for schach. Then you can use it for schach. The ema kabel is tuma. Tabados the sichuch. The only reason is because he made it for schach. Stam the shchiva. Right? But if you made it stam the shchiva. So Ella, my Rabbi says, no, here's how we explain our Mishnah. Big Daila, when it comes to a large mat, the Gemara is going to explain now, Kuli Amalei Pligi the stomach sichuch. If one makes a large mat without intentions, we say in the stomach it was made for schach, and therefore it's okay, right? A large one stam is okay, as long as it wasn't specifically made for shchiva. So a large one stam is for schach. So ki pligi, when do they argue? Biktana, only if a small mat was made without intention. Tanakama savar stam the Tana shchiva. Tanakama held that if you make a small reed mat, it's made for sleeping, and therefore it's no good unless you specifically made a small one for the purposes of sukkah. And Rabbi Eliezer savar no stam katana not sichuch. Rabbi Eliezer holds that no, not only a large reed mat is made in the summer for schach for shade, but even a small one. The hachi, turn the page. The hachi kamar. This means just a couple more lines. When it comes to a large reed mat, if you make it a large one specifically for shchiva, then it's makabel tuma. Then can use it for schach. That's only the large ones that you made specifically for sleeping. But he made a stam for a large one. It's like if you made a large one without any intention, it's like he made it for schach and you use it as schach. Skip the parentheses, right? V'yasa, and then Rabbi Yasser comes to the Mishnah Lameir to say achas katana, v'achas gedola, stomach share. No, anyone not only large but even small, if you made it stam, then it's share because it was for the sichuch. It was made for schach. All right, we'll stop here before the Gemara asks. What's the definition of gedola and katana?
So like 6 feet.
6 feet, right? 3. 6 feet. But you don't.
You know, but that's
Size should not be